Well, we're back with racing back. Oh, the MotoGP season is underway. Plenty to talk about there. And we have a super guest today, Randy Mamola, my old friend, our old friend. 13 Grand Prix wins in the 500cc class, 54 podiums, one of the few riders to win 500cc Grand Prix on 3 different makes of machine, and of course 4 times runner-up in the World Championship. And I'd forgotten 3 podiums in the 250cc class way back in 1979 when I was still in nappies. So that's why I've probably forgotten. Randy, a warm welcome to you. Thanks for joining Racing Back. And let's get cracking straight away. I'd forgotten. You first came over to Europe riding a 250, didn't you?
Yes, I did. In fact, obviously, you probably saw the pictures when I was in Imola, but I was too young. I was only 17. So I was in the Yamaha yellow colors, the American colors for Yamaha. And it was the Daytona 200, Imola 200, Paul Ricard 200, and Gino Amizano, which was the creator of AGV helmets. He said, don't worry about it. We'll get you in and you can run the 250 class because it was a support class. And when I got there, they wouldn't let me race. In 1979, I started in the 250 and 350.
Yeah, and what you had 3 podiums in the 250cc class. So pretty decent start coming over from the States.
Yes. So the thing is, Nick, I started with Bimota. And what happened again was, I went to New Zealand really, really young at 14 years old, 14, 15. And when I say 14, 15, I'm going to say 74, 75 and 75 and 76 because it was Christmas time. It was December time, obviously summer down in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And I got asked to go down there and ride my TA 125 and a 250 down at the Marlboro Series, which was very famous back then.
Was that with Ron Grant?
Yes. Yamaha, I was a Yamaha rider from age 14, and they had given me a TA 125, and eventually I just rode AFM, things like that. But there was a gentleman called Tommy McCleary Yamaha in New Zealand, and through obviously my ex-manager Jim Doyle and what was happening with Yamaha in the US, they invited me to come over, and that kind of started everything because there was Pat Hennon, there was Greg Hansford, there was the Sale brothers, there was what's his name? I'll think of it in a sec. But there was a lot of people coming from Europe, and even Chaz Mortimer was there. And so it was super, super funny and super fun, but this got my publicity, but I was still too young to be able to go to World Championship.
Yeah. And you came in 1980, 500. Scotty, I mean, you were young then, weren't you? 1980.
Well, I was actually even younger because 1979, I split with Bimota and I went with Serge Zago. And so when I went with Serge Zago, what was happening was Mike Baldwin was racing for Kawasaki in the US, a factory rides in the superbike class in America. And I was running the Bimota bikes. I had 2 podiums right away. In my first race was in Venezuela after Daytona. I finished 4th in the 250, and I don't think I finished in the 350. There was a problem with the bike, back-to-back races. And then the very next one was Austria, but it was very strange when you look at this. Austria had the 350 class, but not the 250 class.
Yeah.
And so my very second 250 race was in Hockenheim, and I finished second to Cork Bellington. And then the next one was Imola. And when I went towards Imola, I was battling with him. And one of the things that we had issues was with the brakes. Brembo was just starting at that time, if you think about Brembos now.
Yeah.
But Brembo was just starting at that time, being an Italian team, Bimota creating their own machines and things like this and using a standard 250 TZ250 engine. Um, you remember Little George Vukmanovic was my
Of
mechanic,
course.
and we were living in Misano, and where Bimota was. And after that race at Daytona, it was me, Freddie, and Skip Askelin before my first Grand Prix, and we were on the podium. I had issue with the front brakes. They had two small little discs, and I told George, I go, we need to go back to a standard TZ steel disc. It doesn't matter how heavy it is and so on. And they didn't want it to happen. So I'm already running second in the championship just after 3 races. And I knew that I knew in my own heart that I could beat or race with Cork. And even though he was on the factory Kawasaki. And when we tried to do that, it didn't work. And so I had to pay my way out of the contract. Mike Baldwin was racing for Zago when there was no races in America. And he had the 500, but he was using a 350 to learn the racetracks. So we asked Zago, can I use a 350 into a 250? And he says, yeah. And then the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Baldwin broke his leg in Loudon, New Hampshire that year. And it was 4 or 5 days, the weekend before Assen. I was asked to break the bike in for him at a racetrack called Namur in Belgium. So I broke it in. When I did this, what most people didn't realize, I was already riding TZ 750 at 17 years old and 18 in the AMA. So which is just crazy. I was Danny Pedrosa's size. But I had a lot of experience of racing all different motorcycles and things because of the AFM. I used to race 50, 125, 250, and 750, all 2 strokes, at the AFM. So, moving forward, Baldwin breaks his leg, and the next race is Assen. And I've never been to Assen before. It was the long track. And we're getting there. I get the phone call on Wednesday because Thursday, Friday used to be the practice.
That's right,
and then the race on Saturdays. And, Kenny, at that time, I was really close with Kenny. I was always really close with Kenny because he was dirt tracking way ahead of me and things, like 7 or 8 years older than me. And he just said, if you get to ride that 500, just be really careful around this track because if any little mistakes, turns out to be a big, big mistake. And basically, I think I qualified 14th, something like that, 12th, 13th, 14th, and I finished like 13th or 14th. And if you guys remember, was the always back-to-back races with Spa-Francorchamps.
Yeah.
It was.
Which was always super fun because you had the same crowd going from one race to the next. It was just super. And I got there, and it was the first year of the short circuit, if you will, if you call Spa short circuit. But as you guys know, it was a really long through Saventum and all of that. A lot bigger track and full in a 500, fourth and fifth and sixth gear. Anyway, going there, the new asphalt wasn't grippy, and everybody was complaining about it. The Dunlop seemed to work. Kenny had good years. Barry Sheen had Michelin, and we were out there. My first practice, I was fastest. The second practice, I was second fastest. But the riders got together. The top guys, obviously factory riders, were talking about not boycotting it, not racing. And there was called the Dorint Hotel. I don't know if you ever heard of the Dorint Hotel, but it was probably one of the nicest hotels that was in that forest area.
Yeah.
I walk in there and I said, I don't give a shit what you guys are doing, but I'm racing. And they're going, no, you're not. And they fucking taped my hands behind my back and said, oh yeah, just sit down in here and watch us. And I was never even thoughtful of wanting to race. I felt that it was really good and so on. But in the 6 races that I had the bike, I got 2 podiums, 2 second places, which was awesome because racing with Kenny and Barry at 19, and even Pedro Acosta and a few of the riders that were trying to break the youngest ever podium finisher still haven't. And they said, how the hell did you do that? And what most people don't realize is that the Americans or the Australians or New Zealanders or whatever, when they came, we went straight to the 500 class as opposed to, the others without, learning tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still
Didn't
are.
work their way up the class structure in the standard European way.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Martin Rain still reminds us that you're the youngest podium finisher in the Premier class, doesn't he? And there you go. You've told the story, Randy. And 1980 with Suzuki. I remember going to Zolder. I think it's the only time we went to Zolder, wasn't it? Only time they raced there. And you won your first 500cc Grand Prix.
Yes. So Barry Sheen obviously was with Heron Suzuki in 1979, and they didn't get a contract put together because Barry wanted to run, I believe it was called Akai Yamaha. And so therefore I took over his seat. And I don't want to say his seat because that seat was freaking like a crown. It was something very special, Barry Sheen wearing those colors and so on. So yes, I got there, and you're absolutely right. We only had one time Zolder, Belgium. It was an awesome track to me. The thing is, what was happening is the Belgian Federation were really nervous that we would boycott the race again if anything was wrong with Spa-Francorchamps. So they took it to Zolder and left it an extra year. That was my first Grand Prix victory. So it was sweet.
Yeah. And I think you won Silverstone that year as well, didn't you? The British Grand Prix.
Yes. It was my mother and father's 35th wedding anniversary. So it was super special. I brought them over, and they got to see that race. I mean, they've been to Italy and a few other places with me before, but for the Grand Prix, they got to see that, which was awesome.
And carry on, Jules. Sorry.
Your record as youngest ever podium finisher, given what we've all just said, that's a record that's going to stand for a long time, as far as I can see, if not forever.
I mean, when you think about what's happening now in MotoGP and the level of the bike and how different and more technology there is, obviously Aldegar had an opportunity to be at the beginning of the year,
yes,
last year, to beat my time, only because it's like, I don't know, 19 years and 275 days or something like that. Obviously I was rooting for him not to do it.
You're honest, Randy.
Again, it was something very, very special. And I still watch these guys, and I think it's awesome how fast the young kids are riding still today.
Agreed.
Then you won on a Honda, you won on a Yamaha, you rode the Cagiva, you really had everything. What was the best bike out of those? I'd say probably out of the three, because you won Grand Prix on them, but the Cagiva was a gorgeous motorcycle, wasn't it?
Yes, the Cagiva was an awesome motorcycle, and from periods of time, over the last years, including me at Goodwood and things like that, I'm usually riding the Heron Suzuki, or something around that, or sometimes a Cagiva. And everybody always says, Schwantz, he was the 93 world champion. And if you try to compare my bike at 1980 or 81, that same bike, didn't have a power valve, it didn't have these things. But equally, it was bloody fast, very quick, responsive, and things like that, such as a two-stroke was. That was very unique. When I started out dirt track racing, like Kenny Roberts and everybody, all of us did, Eddie, Wayne, so on, Schwantz, Freddie, we all did dirt track, and dirt track, just helped us to control bikes and things like that. But as I said to you already, in the AFM, I rode a 50cc, 125, 253, and 500. 750, all at the same time at a very young age. So by having that background, it didn't seem to bother me when I got on a bike. I'd listen to the bike and see if I can adapt to it, and usually it worked.
I love that. That reminds me, I listen to the bike. John Surtees' famous saying was, "Our bike." What it is, it's a conversation between you and the machine. It's one of the things that sticks in my mind as a surgeon.
100%, Jules. I mean, I find it I guess with aerodynamics and things like this the stuff that we're seeing now is a bit different, especially when they
Mm,
Ryder comes from Moto 2 to go up. And with us, obviously, there were different patterns and things like that. I mean, the Honda three-cylinder was an incredible motorcycle, as we know, when Freddie won the title in '83. And there were the four Americans that were 80 in first, second, third, and fourth. Eddie was fourth behind me in third in that championship. And that three-cylinder was just incredible at that time. But then obviously Honda built a four and et cetera, and everybody, kind of followed suit with that. But it was always very, very exceptional to race these different brands of motorcycles. I will say, having Mike Sinclair, George Vukmanovich, Jeremy Burgess in my corner of the garage in 1980, 81. When did Pat Hennig get injured?
Oh, golly, 70.
It had to be
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
78 or
79?
79.
78, 79. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
because Mike was with me in with Suzuki, and it was this era, this times match races, everything
Yeah.
to do with what we did
Mm.
in racing was super fun, super.
Yeah. And I think, I won't say putting it mildly, I think that reflected on the whole picture, didn't it, Randy, at the time? Racing was fun. It was very, very dangerous. Of course, it was riding those two strokes. But I think it reflected on the paddock life and life in general. You all led it to the full, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to have more Americans coming over. It was Kenny who left, when he left in '78 to win his first title. '77, I was only 17 and I was still racing in America. And I was trying to be Grand National Champion as such as he was, doing dirt track, road racing, and short track. But when he took off and left, it kind of created this euphoria to head to Europe. And then, as I said, already at 17, I'd already been to New Zealand two different times. One down there, did dirt track down there with Speedway riders. Mike the Bike, I saw him, Haleworth, there in his Citroen, and I was just blown away with the Citroen that he had. When he turned the headlights, when he turned the steering wheel, the headlights would move with it. I don't know which car that is, but it's like the Cadillac of France or whatever they called it. It's amazing that certain things that you do remember at our age,
Yeah.
Yeah.
versus I don't know where my keys are at right now.
Join the club. Welcome to my
Yeah,
club.
welcome yeah. We had to not have a podcast the other week because I'd locked myself out.
Yeah.
It happens.
So he
But
didn't know where the keys were. Yeah.
no. Yeah. Life outside the racing was, I think, reflected in the whole period, Randy. You all live life to the full, and I think you led the way in many ways. There was so many great times, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, with Wayne Gardner, Mick Doohan, came over, towards later in the '80s and things like that. It was simplified in terms of, when Doug Chandler came over, these guys and Schwantz, they're all into either hunting or fishing or something like that. So with our motorhomes, we'd all, where are we going now? And then we'd head off. And, even when the Schwantzes came over, Jim and Cheryl Schwantz used to drive the motorhome for Kevin. So it really made it a fun, loving sport. And even to this day, the Japanese are the ones that stay together in all those small classes, Moto 3
Yeah.
and in Moto 2. They're all sitting around in a motorhome or close by and always eating their Japanese food and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was just super, super fun. And it wasn't as though we all had private airplanes to take off and head back to Monaco and or Andorra. We were going to the next racetrack and having fun in between.
Nobby Ueda used to refer to it as a Japanese village. You know, six 125 riders sat around slurping noodles and rice.
Yeah, but you all know how cool it is.
Yeah.
How great when you walk into a Japanese restaurant when they're slurping noodles in Japan and stuff, and in the paddock, it's just the same fold. And you know that they're always genuine in inviting everybody. Come on in, do this, and so on. So it's great.
Do you remember
Great.
your favourite restaurant in Suzuka? The railway station, wasn't it? We used to go there
Yes.
so often. Yeah, the railway station at Suzuka. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Some of the best food is right by the train stations and things like that. And some of the funniest things that happen when people get off with a little bit of whiskey inside of them after work. You got to come in there and eat. But yeah, no, it was awesome. It was great.
Yeah, back to the racing, Randy, and I'm sure it's a question you're often asked, but 4 times runner-up in the World Championship. I won't say it rankles with you, but it you must think about it a fair bit.
Yeah, I mean, what if and if it and so on. The biggest difference, I think, from myself is that I was a young rider at 19 going into the 500 class, got a factory ride in the 500 class. And although I had these top guys for mechanics and you know, Mike Sinclair and so on, eventually Warren Willing was involved with Yamaha and stuff when I raced for Kenny. But when I had that, it was still I was kind of the leader of the team in terms of who I was at racing.
Yeah.
But I was still very young without experience. When you have Kenny and Barry Sheen, who are like 8 or 9 years older than me, already racing 2 times, 3 times in the World Championship before I really did my full season in 1980, where Kenny started in 78. You know, I didn't know any racetracks, things like that. I made mistakes, but we also lost the championship because of machinery.
Yeah.
And, you know, my first year racing against Kenny for the World Championship was 1980. I think my bike broke down twice. I had to win in Nürburgring, the long circuit, and you know we all had to go there. We all rode street bikes and learned the track, so on. I qualified 9 seconds quicker than the lap record and 3 seconds faster than anybody on the front row. I was leading the race. Kenny was 5th. And on the last lap of only 6 laps, the Suzuki used to suck one of the seals for the crankshaft or whatever, and some of the oil would come out of where the transmission would be, and it would start to foul the spark plug. So it started fouling the spark plug, and I didn't win the World Championship. I mean, maybe if I would have won the race and Kenny finished 4th, he would have won it anyway.
Yeah.
But for me to be 20 years old and battling with somebody who's already been in the World Championship, who's already 2 times world champion, for me, I was at the top of the world. And, you know, there's always going to be the clowns that say, you're not at the top of the world unless you're first and so on. Let me tell you something. To get a medal in the 500cc class at 20 years old without even knowing any of the circuits on a 500 is something that was very unique. And for me to be able to do it with the other brands of motorcycles, it was also very, very unique.
Yeah.
So,
Randy, the thing that occurs to me here is this sort of proves nothing has changed. You were racing as a tiny kid on all sorts of motorbikes on the dirt. All those Spanish kids all over Motor Grand Prix at the moment started racing around car parks when they were toddlers,
right?
Peewees and stuff, and came up and they arrived as teenagers as ready to go at World Championship level. That's what you did. Nothing changed.
So now back to back, Galena. Obviously, there was Galena Suzuki, with Graziano Rossi and
Franco and
Lucanelli. No, Lucanelli.
Yeah. Oh, right.
So Lucanelli wins the championship in 81. I'm the number 1 rider, but he wins the championship. What happens? So what happens is, you know, and after 1980, the season of 1980, the motorcycle was quite big to me. And don't forget, Will Hartog, Barry Sheen, they're all tall riders and things like that. So I go to Japan to do the test. Galina's already been there with Lucanelli and Graziano, and they love the new bike. I get on it and I said, okay, I was a certain amount of time quicker and at the test track. And I said to them, if I could ask you to do something for me, I would ask you to do this. Throw this thing in hot water, put it in the dryer and make it shrink just a little bit. And, by millimeter or whatever, I said, half an inch here or half of that. I'm not into millimeters and so on, like the British. And so we always did things in inches and so on. Anyway, they make this bike really smaller, and it went around with the test rider 1.5 seconds quicker in the test. And so I got it. And then obviously they gave it to Galina. One of the other things that would happen when you're number one rider for a manufacturer, sometimes they're bringing new stuff. I mean, we needed more compression, or we needed to have different piston, things that were able to compete against Yamaha and the Kawasaki's and Morbidelli and so on and so forth at that time. And unfortunately, in Monza, I'm on pole position, and the bike seizes on the warm-up lap. I lose the championship. I think I lost it by 8 or 9 points. So who is it? What is it? It's called luck. It's called this. You take it for granted. Again, I have another silver medal, and that's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So one of the things that happened is, and I don't think a lot of people look back in that way, but I beat Kenny Roberts. He was a 3 times world champion. Lucanelli beat me, but I beat Kenny Roberts. I beat Freddie Spencer. I beat Eddie Lawson. I beat all these guys that were 3 times world champion, same motorcycle, something like that. So I know exactly where my place is. I'm an entertainer. I know that I'm an entertainer. Racing was entertaining no matter what, whether we got on it or not. And that's what was so good about being a part of Heron Suzuki at the beginning, because it taught me a lot of the camaraderie and the things that you guys have in the BSB. It wasn't called BSB back then, but the UK championship was just awesome.
Yeah.
Newbolds and all of those guys and Ditchburns and all these long names and so on was so much fun. Which was just in between what we used to do in Grand Prix.
Yeah. Nick, we have 8 minutes left, more like 9 actually. So you want to move us along?
Yeah, not enough time. And they were.
Listen, I can always come back because you're not in my house.
I'm going to ask you. Don't worry.
Don't worry about that, Randy. Yeah, they were difficult machines to ride, and I don't think anybody will forget. Was it Mazzano where you ran alongside the Rothmans Honda for I don't know how long, then hopped back on? The picture that was shown throughout the world for many. They were tough bikes to ride, weren't they?
Yeah, 1985. I rode for Honda in 1984 and 85, and let me give you a quick analysis of what happened in 84.
Yeah,
I finished second in the World Championship again.
Yeah.
I missed the first 2 races because Suzuki quit in 1982, but they didn't say anything until too late. I didn't have a bike to use. I called up Oguma, very well, the engineer of Honda, one of the smartest guys and funnest guys inside the paddock for being a Japanese, white cap.
Yeah.
Anyway, I talked him into giving me a 3-cylinder. I rode the match races. But the match race was what was the one called at Donington Park, which was Jody Scheckter. We did something together. Anyway, it was the match race series, but we did all the races at Donington.
That's right.
And they brought in the different Europeans and so on. Anyway, I think I won 3 or 4 of the races. Very first time riding the 3-cylinder Honda. Freddie Spencer hurts his foot. I go to Harama. Honda says, can you go to Harama? This is why it was red, white, and blue. I had to pay for TT. I had to pay for George and my mechanics. Mike Sinclair, I think it was at the time as well. I had to pay for the mechanics, and they paid for the bike to go there. And I end up second in the World Championship to Eddie, beating everybody else, including Freddie with the 4. Again, it's just one of those another of those silver medals. Had I raced the first 2, which was South Africa and Misano, there's a good chance of me winning a championship. So, but yeah, so listen, running alongside the bike, this was these are funny things when you used to come in and break, bubbles broken. And what'd you do? You almost crashed? Yeah. But this was something that, I didn't even fathom that somebody got it on recorded on TV or on the camera, let alone 2 or 3 different cameras to have that. And obviously it made things pretty interesting.
And coming on to the modern day, we've just had Thailand. Did you watch the race from Thailand?
Yes.
Yeah. What about the Acosta Marquez incident in the sprint race? I personally thought it was okay, the overtaking maneuver. What did you think?
At the beginning, I'm going to say, because in the past, anything like that was not a penalty.
Yeah.
And it just didn't seem that it was that rough. In saying that, there were probably 5 or 6 different passes in that same corner with Pedro doing it to Mark, and they never touched. So obviously, when it gets down to the last 2 laps, these guys touched. They didn't run into each other or anything like that, but these guys touched. And I think that Mark was very loyal to the fact of the championship, that listened to Freddie and I'm sorry, not Freddie, Simon Crafer and whoever else is inside the penalty box, let's just say. And they fixed it, and he was okay with it. You have a bad taste of things and so on when there's a penalty that goes against you, and or like you guys loving football, if somebody gets a red card or something like that. What I don't want to see is, I don't want to see a rider that a level of Mark not try to pass somebody. And if they have that, touch and they go off, they got to be able to accept that. I think it's still very important that the championship with Liberty and there, I think that the riders should have face-to-face meetings with this, because racing is so difficult at the moment with the level of the bikes and the level of the machines, that it's important that they all talk.
And it's interesting, Pedro, as far as I've heard, I wasn't there, obviously, didn't have any complaints. In fact, Pedro thought he'd lost the race. Fair and square.
I mean, when he went inside, our good friend Dennis Noyes and I have been talking lately. And he's one of the biggest analysis of everything. And he basically said that these were the passes that I saw. And if you look, they barely touch. I mean, they really touch, but Pedro also had to pick the bike up because obviously Mark was there, but Mark didn't run off to the curb. But it is what it is. Anyway, now that's the regulation, and you better stick to it, guys. If I am, better stick to it.
I mean, that's a heck of a stick to give yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the first race of the year, isn't it? That's you're giving yourself a lot of trouble there.
So really quick, because I know we don't have short time. Obviously, Aprilias were just bombarding the place in Thailand on Sunday. And, Bezzecchi obviously had 3 crashes. Mark had 3 crashes, I think, in the test and so on. And so going into that, the Aprilias work. And I think this year in particular, it's going to be he who stays on the bike more than anything, because it's so fragile of how close everybody is and the maneuvers to pass and take over.
Next round, Goiânia in Brazil. Now that was a fun place, wasn't it, Randy?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to get to go. I'm leaving for the States on Monday. So I have 3 weeks off before going to Texas. And then I stay there a couple more weeks. This is the only time that I get a chance to go there. And obviously I'll go to Austin. But Brazil is going to be interesting because a lot of these guys, I don't think any of them is there.
No.
None of them's ever been there.
No.
So it's going to be an open track and so on. So one of the things that I'm noticing between the bikes and everybody's, they all jump, these commentators just jump at, the Honda's great now, it's this and so on. Listen, at any moment of the time, there's a bike that works better, but not as good as what we've seen with the Aprilia and or the Ducati. But when they get to the super track, obviously there's riders that ride certain tracks better than others, and that they all separated. And as you know, with Pecco and everything that happened last year, Ducati was lucky to have Mark in order to win that championship.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, you saw that Bezzecchi won 2 races, and now he's won this Grand Prix again. He's going to be fourth and outright, but it's how that bike works. Honda's getting better, but it still needs the next step, and that next step is super hard to find. Really, really hard to find, of getting grip at every racetrack to go. They might find it for one, but it might not work it for the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. But Randy, it's been an absolute pleasure and bringing back so many memories, so much more to talk about. You will come back and join us, won't you? When you come back from the States and you've had a look at Austin and you've had a look at this year's MotoGP apps, from the paddock. Thanks so much for the memories.
I'll only come back if your fans request it.
Yeah, they will. I absolutely promise you.
I'll be back. Don't you worry. Again, it's easy to work on a computer.
Wonderful.
I think the sister-in-law helped you there, Randy.
Yes.
The daughter-in-law, sorry. Yeah. Wow, Jules, Randy, that was fantastic. So much I'd forgotten as well.
Yes, that was the eye-opener. You sort of tend to think of him as just a happy-go-lucky, slightly
dead right.
Comedian.
Yeah.
And there was a racer talking, if ever I've heard one.
Yeah.
Superb.
Yeah, and he's promised to come back. I've spoken to him actually since we spoke, and he's very, very keen to come back, and we'll have him back because we've only scraped the surface, really.
We have, but notice, as his showman bit came through, he'll come back if you ask him.
Yeah.
You have been told.
Yeah, that's right. Well, future guests, hopefully we got Peter Clifford next week. We're just waiting to be confirmed from Peter. He's still in New Zealand, but that'll be interesting. The WCM team, a private team that did so well with the backing of Red Bull. And then, of course, Peter, Mr. Red Bull Rookies, isn't he? And that's going to be interesting after we've spoken to so many people about the future. Steve Parrish is coming on the week after that. That's to commemorate Barry Sheen's passing. And then Dennis Noyce, we're going to talk about the American Grand Prix, of course, in Austin and the future in America, but very specially 20 years ago, the late, great Nicky Hayden won that MotoGP World Championship. Somebody would never forget.
Still the greatest afternoon of sport I've ever been present.
Wow, there you go. James Toseland said he's going to come on 2 times, of course, World Superbike champion. We're hopefully going to get Freddie Spencer, and Jerry Burgess has promised to come back. So plenty to look forward to. Don't forget, if you want your tickets for all forms of motorsport, put on Two Wheels, the TT races, MotoGP, British Superbikes, World Superbikes, motorsporttickets.com. They're the people for you. QR code on the screen at the moment or via the link on the show notes. So please use them if you can. That also helps us, doesn't it, Jules?
It does indeed. And if you get your podcasts on YouTube, you will notice there is effectively a racing back club you can join it does cost, but it's half a pint of shandy.
Not these days, not even a half, I don't think.
No, it's about a sip. And that way you get to access the pod early on a Thursday rather than waiting for the general drop, which happens on a Friday nowadays. And there's a forum, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do, we're trying to raise a little bit of cash so we can improve the mechanics of it all. Rich, who has to be obeyed, who's still not talking to me because Oxford United beat West Bromwich Albion. But
don't talk about football.
No, we won't go into that. But he wants to just upgrade things, and I think that's a great idea not for us particularly, but for you people who have supported
just to make it
so loyally. Yeah,
to make it a bit more professional, a bit tidier.
Yeah. Does that mean we've got to tidy ourselves up a bit?
God, I hope not.
Jules, good to talk to you. Randy Mamola, thank you all very much. And we'll speak to you next week where we hope we'll be joined by Peter Clifford.